What is up, Niner faithful? So glad you could join us this evening for our very special guest, the one, the only, the man, the myth, the legend himself, Mr. Greg Panelli. How are you doing, man?
I'm good, guys. How about you? I appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I sent him a message. I said, hey, if you don't want to be on my show, just tell me to kick rocks. It'll be totally fine because I will understand. But he graciously accepted my invitation to come on to talk a little bit about the 49ers and the drop back passing game. We've been doing this off-season sort of series, trying to walk through the building blocks of the Shanahan offense and break it down. So I believe that a well-informed fan base makes a better fan base.
I
Can
agree.
sometimes help us avoid some conversations and things on social media. Sometimes there's only so much you can do.
Sometimes that
Uh,
that is a very yeah, that's a touchy one. Social media, there's no winning on social media.
there isn't. So, speaking of that, you've taken some heat on social media, and I've also seen you say, man, I want all the smoke.
Yeah.
Um, so before we dive into a little bit of that, give us a little bit of your background for those of people who may not be familiar, if they've been sitting under a rock and they're not active on Twitter and know who you are. A little bit of your background, how you got started doing what you're doing, and just kind of what you do.
Yeah. So um I played quarterback from the time I was mm, I guess the Pop Warner years. I didn't do a ton of Pop Warner football. I played 2 years of Pop Warner. So I guess I played quarterback 1 year, or 1.5 years. The other part of that, I was a tight end, and so the that was my first year. One of the coach's kids was actually the quarterback, and then he ended up being my center in high school. So I always tell these kids these days, especially some of the younger guys, when they get caught up in, little Timmy's not going to play quarterback this year because his dad's coach and said, "Look, man, nobody ever got a scholarship off of Pop Warner football. Nobody's future was ever, um, decided off of Pop Warner football." And so interesting enough, I wasn't even going to play football going into high school. I was actually all about baseball, big time baseball guy. I was probably better at baseball. I think at least it just came more natural to me. Even in high school, I was probably better at baseball, but I always had these expectations, I think, to play football. A lot of people expected me to play football. So I ended up doing well in high school and then went on to Modesto Junior College. Won a couple of bowl games there, and obviously played there with Croc and all conference there, and then ended up going on to Eastern Washington, and I was there for 2 years, and then I transferred to a smaller school, and then I worked for. Shoot, I actually got once I was done with college, I tore my ACL, MCL, meniscus my last year, got my degree, and then wanted to kind of see like the backside of sports. So I worked for the San Jose SaberCats for a little bit. I did stuff just in the front office side, sales, marketing, just a bunch of different things. Like their front office was so small, so everybody was kind of wearing different hats. Then I went and worked for the Oregon Ducks when Chip was there. I was still doing sales and marketing stuff for football, baseball, basketball. Decided I wanted to make more money because I was making, I think it was like $25,000 salary. Got all the Nike stuff that we wanted though, but wasn't making very much money. And then ended up going and I worked in finance for like 4 or 5 years. And then, but it was 2013. So I was there when Chip's last year, right before he went to the Eagles. That's when I was there. So Mariota, I think, was like a freshman, maybe a sophomore there. And Buckner and Armstead had
Yeah.
just came in. So who was the DN? Dion Jordan, I think it was, who was like the big high profile DN. Kyle Long was there. Shoot, they were stacked. Who's the safety that everybody hates? Gosh, I'm drawing a blank. I know him and Josh have gotten into it multiple times. He's laying the dirty hits here and there. I think he was a safety at Oregon, or yeah, safety at Oregon, and now he's in the league. Played for the Dolphins for a little bit. I can't think of his name. God, it's gonna kill me
Uh,
though. Somebody's gonna have to help me out while I'm
yeah. Yeah. In the
while I'm
chat,
going
help
through
him
it.
out.
Somebody help me out. But it was safety played at Oregon, and he's been known to have some hits in the league that kind of tick some people off. But Anyways, Oregon was stacked when I was there. It was fun. It was fun when I was working there. Basketball was doing well too. Baseball did really well. I ended up moving on. 2013, I ended up getting with my now wife, who's from Firebaugh. Met this kid named Josh Allen when he was a junior in high school. And so then kind of started doing some stuff with him on the side. He was my little brother-in-law's best friend. So just started doing little things on the side. I trained with a quarterback coach from the Bay Area, Roger Theater, who was a really well-known quarterback coach. QB guru, had a ton of different guys in the Bay Area. From when I was there on weekends, it was me and Colin Kaepernick, and that was right when he was at Nevada. And then 20 other kids from the Bay Area, and 10 of them had scholarship offers already. I mean, he had anybody you could think of. Ken Dorsey actually used to train with him. Kyle Wright from Miami back in the day. So all Dennis Dixon, he had everybody. And then, so taking that, basically what I learned from him and then what I learned in college and trying to implement it. And I just did this stuff on the side. I would do little things with my local high school, and then stuff with Josh. And then about 2017, I was still doing stuff on the side, but I kind of looked into it a little bit more. I asked Josh, who was really doing quarterback training out here in the Central Valley, the Fresno area, the Modesto area, because we had to go to the Bay Area. Like when I was training, we had to drive to the Bay Area. So there was nobody really around doing it. And I saw a bunch of guys like starting to do it on social media. And I was looking at some of the stuff they're doing. I'm like, there's no way. Like, these guys are doing this, and they have this many quarterbacks. And it wasn't guys around here. It was just in general. So started it like officially like Panelli Passing Academy. And then 6 months later, I quit my job in finance. And the rest is history, I guess. So, I train probably 50-ish quarterbacks a week right now from college, some of the NFL guys, right? And then mostly high school and younger dudes, which the younger guys are great. Like there's some people don't want to work with the younger guys, but if you can get a kid that's 11 or 10, 11, 12 years old, now you have an opportunity to shape them and hopefully have them as a client or a paying client for 6 to 7, 8, 9 years or whatever it may be, versus the kid that's going into his senior year and he's going to be with you for 4 months, right? Who's already developed a ton of bad habits. So that's kind of the background. Sorry, it was a little bit long-winded, but that's more of the background and kind of give you the full story on
No,
how it came about.
I love it because I didn't know a lot of that, and I think that's amazing. I love how you say some of the younger guys are easier because I've worked with teenagers for a long time, and I'll tell you, the younger they are, the easier they are to work with because
Yep.
there's less stripping away of things that you have to unlearn before they can learn
Right.
things.
Which is the biggest thing. And that was the whole Trey Lance conversation, right? Like people just think because he trains with a quarterback coach, regardless of the guys, whoever, whether it's Quincy Avery or whether it's 3D QB or whether it's Christensen now, he's to the point where the muscle memory is engraved. It's so hard, no matter who you work with. We could show you everything that it's supposed to look like and say, hey, we want you to look like Brock. You got to look like Jimmy. You got to look like Brady throwing the ball. It's not that easy, though. You have to do it so much. And then in order to do it when there's live fire, that's a whole different story, right? He can look clean throwing, routes on air or, when they're just doing some type of footwork drill. And then it goes into Team O during practice. Is it going to look the same, right? And usually it doesn't. It kind of reverts back to what you know in that feel. So you got to do it so much to where it's ingrained. And that's why working with the younger guys, you can kind of shape them, and then they look better, cleaner, and more natural. Like most of the 12, 13-year-olds right now that I have would look better than most of the high school or even college guys that I have, just because they've been going at it for a couple of years now.
Right. It's about time on task, right? Like it's just the repetition and
Yeah.
consistency of repetition. What's it like for you having a guy that you've coached in Josh Allen is now we know is the cover athlete for Madden.
Yeah.
I mean, does that feel a little surreal for you?
Yeah. It's for a while, like I worked out with him. We golfed 3 days after the draft, and then we trained a couple days thereafter, and he hadn't thrown in like a month. He's doing like the whole tour of visiting all these teams, and they're basically at this rate, they've seen him throw enough, so they're like, "Hey, sit down. We're gonna grill you for 4 hours, and kind of break you down." And so he hadn't thrown in a while, and just going back to like working on the little things, little details, little footwork things that he was kind of missing on. So and then watching him go off to the NFL and then year one, and then seeing, I think what was tough at first is like you go into the social media world, like the Twitter world, and you start seeing people talk and seeing this and seeing that. And it's so hard to just keep your mouth shut, especially with somebody that you know personally. It's like, oh, somebody get bag on the 49ers players. And it's like, it is what it is, right? Like people are just going to talk. But then somebody closely, it's tough to turn the eye to it. So I try and do that, but I don't think it really hit me until I think it was playoffs 2021 when they won, and then they came back and everybody was there at the airport waiting for him at like 2:30 in the morning, and they're chanting MVP, MVP, like all of
Mm,
this stuff. And that scene, I'll never forget, like seeing that stuff on social media, on Twitter. It's like gives me goosebumps thinking about it. But that's kind of was like the he's arrived moment. You know what
right.
I'm saying? And it was like he's like a little brother to me. But then on the flip side, you're like, this guy is literally the face of this franchise. Like he is their new um uh their new star. Like this is the mayor of their town, damn near, like this is the guy that they look up to.
Right.
Jim Kelly is here. He's always going to be here. And then it's now you see Jim Kelly hanging out with Josh, and now it seems like Josh is up here compared to Jim Kelly. It's weird to think that, given the fact that Jim Kelly, would, if he would have won 3 of those Super Bowls or even 2 of them, he'd probably be considered, top 5 all time realistically. So,
Right.
um, but that was kind of like the wake up moment where I was like, okay, like this is different. And then we go around town. He'll come back for a couple days here, and then like every year, more and more people recognize him, and then it's
Yeah.
given his, a fake name when we go out to dinner, or he'll call and give his brother's name instead of his name. Um, and then the Madden cover, seeing it for the first time, I had heard about it, and then then I saw the actual release of it, and once I saw like the little helmet picture with I think there's 2 of them, which is like the Bills Mafia one, which is pretty cool, where he's jumping in the stands, and there's that other one where his head's down and it's kind of like shaded on his face, and I was like, holy smokes, like this is pretty badass. Like I'm not even a Madden guy. My son loves it. He's 5 and he just lets it rip on Madden, just on rookie mode, and just goes, and like that's how he knows all of his players, and he knows everybody and wants everybody's jersey, and doing the gritty at flag football games because he sees Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson do it on the game. So he's being a kid, but I showed him the promo thing, and he starts out, and then like 3 or 4 cuts in, they show Josh, and I remember him just looking up at me like this big old face, like, yeah, it's a little bit
Yeah.
different now.
I mean, him and Mahomes are this generation's Brady and Manning.
Yeah.
I mean, they really are as the 2 guys at the top of the league, and there's not a lot of argument right now about that. I mean,
No,
it just is.
there's such a good young quarterback presence right now, I think, in the NFL. Between, like, I'm trying to think of a time where we've had so many guys with so much potential at a young age, from Josh to even obviously Pat is as accomplished as he is, Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert is a freaking stud. Trevor Lawrence is kind of coming into his own now, and they're kind of giving him a team. But between those guys alone, like those guys are big time, right? And then it's kind of starting to trickle down, and we'll see what's going to happen with the Bryce Youngs and the CJ Strouds, but
Right.
obviously plenty of potential there. But I think those guys alone, I can't think of a time since I've watched football where you see the young guys like that are doing this well. And maybe it's because some of the older guys are gone and it's kind of up for the taking, like who's going to sit on the throne of, or the Mount Rushmore of quarterbacks in the NFL now that, Brady's out and Peyton Manning's gone and Aaron Rodgers is on his way out. It's kind of up for grabs right now. So I think it's an exciting time for quarterbacks, and it's an exciting time for young quarterbacks in the NFL because we're going to probably see these guys for the next, like you said, this is the generation. We're going to see them for the next, if we're lucky, 12, 15 years, maybe 12 years, probably. I think would probably be a good number if they all stay healthy, which is cool. That's pretty damn exciting to think about.
Yeah, I mean, it's I think as far as young quarterbacks, we had a period there in the NFL, maybe during the early 2010s, where it wasn't like the young guys that were coming in were really pushing the old guys,
Right.
and where you were saying that, when they walked into a game, there wasn't like, okay, this guy's going to knock off the old guy. Right now, it feels like there's a lot of parity in that league, and it's really a changing of the guard.
Yep.
So with kind of, when you're coaching quarterbacks and you're walking through this kind of stuff, what are some of the things as far as fundamentally that when you're going to sit with a prospect and say, okay, these are the things that are most important for you to understand early? What would kind of be like your Mount Rushmore of traits or things that a quarterback that you want to see for them to be successful at all levels?
Biggest thing is leadership. For sure it's got to be the leadership. There's like the 1A, 1B, 1C. So they're all like top tier things, I guess.
Yeah.
But leadership,
there's nothing you can do without.
Right,
yeah.
Right. So leadership for sure. When you look at a guy, as a recruit or as somebody that you're going to be going after in the NFL, but it typically starts in college, like shaping these kids at an early age to where if I'm a college coach, I can look you in the face and know, okay, I can see this kid being the face of our program, or I can see this kid talking to ESPN and not making us look like idiots, or dealing with the media, dealing with the criticism, dealing with all the things that are going to come, good and bad. And can he stay even keel throughout, right? Then on the flip side, it's being a leader on your team. Is he a good person around the community? Is he a good person in the classroom? Does he act well or act appropriately when he's out and about? They're going to talk. It's crazy to think, but they literally talk to everybody, especially recruiters when they're going to come around town. They'll come and talk to the English teacher. They're going to talk to the PE teacher. They're going to they might go to a local business when they're having lunch. Hey, what do you know about this quarterback? Oh, he came in here last week and he was an a-hole. Well, guess what? Now they're going back to the coach and saying, hey, so-and-so's acting a fool downtown. You better get him right. So they want to know everything that they can, which is important because that's an investment. Their job is online, and 50% of their job is recruiting. So leadership for sure. As far as we can talk like mechanics, arm talent, there's going to be the different variables along the way, or there's going to be, the size things. But if a guy has enough arm talent to make all of the throws, it doesn't have to be a rocket arm, right? Like that's the huge argument right now with the Brock Purdy thing, right? We're talking about, does he have enough arm talent? Trey's got a stronger arm. Well, there's also plenty of guys that have stronger arms, but they weren't worth a crap in the NFL. So it's like you got to take what you can get from it, and it is what it is. So I think that having an ability to make all the throws, but they don't have to be, it doesn't have to be rockets every time you're throwing the ball. But somebody who's also clean mechanically. You don't want to have a guy that's going to come in and it's a project to fix mechanically. And I'm not going into the whole Trey Lance thing when I say that, but it's partly it is like that type of quarterback where they come in and now they have to spend an extra year because you didn't like his mechanics, right? Well, we traded 2 first-round draft picks and what was it, the comp pick or whatever it may be, to say we really don't like his mechanics, so we got to pay buku bucks to send him down to a quarterback coach. Because at that rate in the NFL, they're worried about X's and O's, teaching you the playbook,
right?
All of those. They don't want to have to worry about the mechanical stuff. So getting a guy that's going to be groomed and ready to rock and roll But the other biggest thing is processing information pre-snap, post-snap. Can he recognize fronts? Can he recognize coverages? Can he recognize leverage points and make decisions quickly? And that's probably the hardest piece
Mhm.
um, to teach guys and get them to understand. Like it's some guys pick it up like this. Others, it takes a while. They have to see it. They have to write it on a whiteboard. They have to do it on their iPads or whatever. They have to go out to the field and then rep it in 7-on-7 or rep it in walkthroughs and constantly do it. And I was kind of that person for a while where I had to be the one like writing it down over and over and over and then go outside and then see it on the field. But like I said, I think that probably half the quarterbacks are like that, and then the other half just figure out a way and they get it done. And then there's probably 5% that are just gamers and they'll figure it out when the game freaking happens, right? Like they just go out and play, and for some odd reason it works out for them. So, but processing information is huge, and you do a really good job um, at breaking down and knowing playbook stuff and knowing defenses and look like I do the film breakdown with Croc, and I try and keep it somewhat elementary level, I guess, because of the listeners. Like I can't
Right.
if I do, like, there's going to be a lot of people who just get absolutely lost with it, as you know. But on the same front, like, I watch your stuff and I'm like, holy smokes! Like, you sent me the breakdown. I'm like, this is what it looks like coming from a coach in college, or this is what it looks like in the NFL playbooks. That's the breakdowns you're doing. So very high level. So I give you credit for because I know it doesn't. It's not. It doesn't just take 30 seconds to do it. Like you got to watch it and rewind it and rewind it and rewind it over and over and over, like you are, coach. So you're very sharp with it, and I can appreciate the efforts that you give to it. So,
Well, I really I appreciate that. Because the thing that drives me nuts, especially on social media, is when people will post a clip.
yep,
And this is where I've gone back and forth with and I understand why the NFL was a little reticent about releasing coaches film to the public, and why some players push back because they said, you can give this, and it's kind of like, if you have a really high sports car in the hands of the wrong person, it can get kind of dangerous. And I don't mean that in an arrogant way. It's like what drives me nuts is when you have people that will post like a still off of a play and say this player was wide open. Why didn't the quarterback hit him? The
right,
quarterback missed that.
right,
That drives me nuts. It just absolutely drives me bananas because I'm like, no, you have to understand why the quarterback wouldn't be looking that direction, or why they were looking at this, or why they threw this way. That it's not about the guy being open in the moment. It was what was the information, the data he was getting before that.
right,
You have to look at that in that context. And it drives me bananas when you see people just avoid that and say this guy was wide open, the quarterback missed that. And it seems like people will use that against whatever quarterback they don't like right now,
right.
whether that be Trey Lance, whether that be Brock Purdy, whether that be Jimmy G. We saw that in spades with Jimmy G, right? Like we saw that. And you've taken some heat, as we were talking about, with some of the smoke, because you've been a pretty vocal supporter of Jimmy
Yeah,
G. And I've listened to a lot of what you said, like on Croc's show and stuff, and I always found myself sitting there going, yes, thank you, yes, because it's one of those that Jimmy G, I think, has been, while he's not the world beater of, in the top 5 of quarterbacks in the
yep,
league, he is far better than so many fans have given him credit for.
yep,
Because they don't understand what happened from point A to point D. They only look at point E,
right,
and they overlook everything. And it's like, because one thing that frustrated me watching film before Jimmy G got here was some of the quarterback stuff of like it was like some of the dropbacks. You go, that play was about a hitch too slow. The ball needed to come out a hitch. He took an extra hitch, and it prevented the guy from getting extra yards here, or he didn't identify this coverage pre-snap, and it would be really frustrating. And then when Jimmy G walked through the door, it felt like a lot of that cleaned up.
right,
And it felt like, and my frustration with Jimmy G was usually just the guy never live to play another down.
Right.
That it was always like he'd force something in there and you go, but and I think that upset a lot of fans, but you scratched on this Brock Purdy rocket arm thing. That talk has frustrated me just from the sense of, okay, yes, a big arm is a bonus, but you've got to have all the other things in place first.
Right.
If those things aren't there, it's going to be very hard to have a fully functional offense. And especially, talking about the Shanahan offense, one thing I've seen with the drop back passing game is that there's so much about it that everything in his offense, when you start looking at it as a whole, it all ties to something. Nothing is standalone. There's never this play exists in a vacuum. And so often people will look at plays in a vacuum and it's like, well, no, this play is functioning in concert with these other plays that work off of that. And so much of the drop back passing game is about that timing. It's about the giving the same looks, and it's
Yep.
about keeping the chains moving. It's about keeping the offense operating. That very rarely in the drop back pass game are you looking for a shot. Very in his offense, very often it's about keeping the defense off balance.
Right.
It's about keeping the chains moving, keeping everything. But when it comes to drop back passing, very rarely is he actually hiding what he's doing. Most of the time, it's a lot of times he's spreading things out. To give the quarterbacks more defined looks pre-snap. If he's going to do a drop back pass, it's going to be quick, it's going to be out because the team is built to run the ball. He doesn't want his offensive lineman sitting there for 7-step drops.
Right.
His playbook, he has one 7-step drop. Everything's 3 and 5 steps. And then there's, 5-step with hitch and different stuff. But, it's like when I've looked at with the Brock Purdy thing, I go, okay, let's understand that when we're talking about starting quarterbacks in the NFL, I don't like a lot of the superlatives people use. It's like we're talking about the top 32 human beings in the world at doing this. There's no such thing as a guy with a really weak arm
Right.
that's made it to the starting level. I hate that phrase of like he's got a weak arm, he's got a noodle arm. I'm like, what does that even mean at this level? I mean, are we really like it to me, it doesn't really exist. Can he make the throws or not? That's what I care about. If he can
And,
make
and and what was the record when he was in
them,
the
great.
games?
If he's got a little more zip on it, that
Right.
gives you more thing patient. Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. And how did the offense look? And how did the offense function? On the offense, hey, we're doing
No, no, you're good.
but
You're
if I can
good.
get
Don't
you
even
for
worry
just
about it.
a short minute to kind of understand the full I sometimes people they don't understand the full mental gymnastics that goes in from when the quarterback breaks the huddle to when he's got to snap the ball and get through a completed pass on even just a 3-step drop. What tying that mechanics of it timing. Hopefully you're not losing me. It's saying on my end that it's saying there's some connection issues.
Yeah, it's kind of
A
clicking in
little
and out
bit.
there. I was thinking it was mine for a second.
Okay, can you hear me now though? Am I coming through clearly now?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
better.
Okay, sorry about that. I don't know what it may be. An automatic thing in our area. I'm on a fiber connection, so I don't know why I'd be slow.
Yeah, it's just it's like a
What
lag.
are
So if I
some of
respond to you
the
after the fact, it's almost like it's laggy probably.
okay?
Yeah, it's lagging.
Okay. About the what a quarterback's going through from breaking the huddle to snap through the mechanics of the drop back tying
Yeah.
into the routes.
So first thing, break the huddle. Obviously, you're giving this lengthy play call. Break the huddle. You have by the time the huddle's broken, let's call it 15 seconds, right? You get up to the line of scrimmage. You got 15 seconds to figure out how many safeties are out there. What's the box count, right? How many guys are in between the tackles, D line, linebacker, safeties? What's the front? Are they in a 30 front? Are they in a 50 front? They're going to be in a 40 front. What does that look like? How many D linemen they have? Leverage points of the DBs, right? Are they playing inside shade, outside shade? Are they going to tip their hat? And then at the same time, You got to make the decision on what side of the field you're probably going to start with, which is usually predicated on, again, how many or what they're showing pre-snap. And they should have done enough film review with the scouting report to where, okay, if they show this one high look, but so-and-so's playing at this depth and this leverage here, they're probably going to roll to this coverage. So I'm going to start with this side because this is maybe the zone side that I want to work, right? Like say it's a full field progression. I might be starting on the right side, going all the way to the left, and then my check down. So there's 1, 2, 3, and then my check. And then we might have like a MOR or something on the backside, or your alert read on the backside that's like your pre-snap. If you love it, you're going to take it. So all of those things that I mentioned have to basically be decided within 5 to 7 seconds ish. And then if you don't like it, then you got to say kill, alert, alert, alert. Boom, we're on to the second play that I also gave you in the huddle, Omaha, whatever it may be, right? So then I might have that. And people are like, well, why does Jimmy wear the wristband? What, does he not know the playbook? No, it's because when Kyle's talking through the headset, and everybody's screaming and they go like this and they're trying to hear, he's making sure that he doesn't have to, make sure he gets 2 full plays. He could say, hey, it's going to be 32. Boom, I open up the wristband to play 32 and it's right there for me. Like if I wore one in college, we all wore them in college. There's multiple guys that wear them in the NFL. But his playbook is, some of the names are lengthy, and I'm sure people have heard it on NFL Network where you hear Gruden talking about like West Coast verbiage. Like it's not easy to spit out. And then you got to call 2 plays, right? So it's going to be 1 full play and then alert another play. So I got to make all these decisions. I kill the play, alert, alert, alert. Everybody's got to know that we're on to the next play, and I got to snap it with 3 seconds left. And then make the post snap read. Right? Oh shoot, he rolled a different way. They're doing fire zone. This guy blitzed off this side. Now I got to make the decision and get the ball. So it's like most people that haven't played at a high level don't realize how difficult it really is. And that's just one play. And then the play's done, and then you go right back to the huddle and do it again, and then do it again, and do it again, constantly, right?
It was not your fault.
It's just
receiver dropped it.
Yeah, right? Like, oh, I missed. You know what? We got sacked. So and so missed his block, or hey, he dropped the ball. Whatever. Oh, we're moving the chains, and then we're gonna go to our NASCAR offense really quick, and then coach is yelling plays in, and I'm screaming them out, and I got to make sure that so and so on the right that doesn't know half the playbook is lined up in the right position that he's supposed to be in. And make sure the linemen know what the hell they're doing and listen to their calls too, because that's the other thing I guess I forgot to mention. Some offenses are quarterback driven from a protection standpoint, right? And then there's other offenses, like if you get let's take for the Eagles, for example, right? You got Jason Kelce. That is a phenomenal center in the league. He can handle his own when he gets up to the line of scrimmage. And he's going to make a call for the lineman based off of where they are. So they might get let's say it's a 2-jet protection, okay, which is obviously half band, half slide for those who don't know, or 4 down to the will, and then the back's going to be on the right side. There might be 2-jet in the call, right? And then Jalen's doing his own thing, but Kelsey's up there yelling at the lineman, telling him this, and this, and he might turn around and yell something to Jalen, because he's going to handle it. I know what they're doing, so I'm going to make the call. I'll turn around, yell it to you really quick, and then I'll take that off of you, right? I'll take that off your back. And I'm assuming that's what they do. I haven't watched a ton or listened to a ton of the Eagles stuff from like the protection standpoints, but especially when you have young quarterbacks in a seasoned vet, like who was it, Mack, right? Alex Mack, when he was on, like I would fully expect him to be controlling everything on the front. And centers wanted
and he did with Kyle in Atlanta. There was an interview he did with Matt Ryan where they were talking about that Alex Mack was talking about how the center handled all the protections, all the adjustments. Yep. And that's also when you look at Kyle's offense, that the need for a smart center.
Yes.
That when you really look at 2019, when some of the things in the pass game really were struggling protection wise, was after Richburg went down,
right?
That they were struggling picking up and sliding the right ways, and backs being in tune with the the kind of drop that the tackles were making. And it was frustrating to watch because you can tell, okay, the offensive line was no longer in sync. And I think people really underestimate. I love how you said it, how difficult that really is, the amount of information and processing it as quickly as they can. Because, when I'm watching film, a lot of times, like if I've watched it through and I go, okay, this was a 3-step drop play, you're looking at like, these guys have got to figure out in the first 2-3 steps that the defender's making where they're going with the ball.
Right.
I mean, that is like, they think people almost have this idea. It's like Madden, where, I can do all these plays in Madden. You go, it's nothing like that.
No,
like this really is not.
The defenses are so exotic these days. They do such a good job, and the guys are freaks. Like, you get safeties that roll into the box, and it looks like, one, and all of a sudden at the snap of the ball, you get one that flies out back to his deep half, and they're playing Tampa 2. And the whole time it looked like one. And you're like, holy hell, like the fact that they're doing that stuff and you're trusting your DBs, credit to the defense, but you're trusting your DBs or your defensive guys to make that type of play and bust out of there like that it's insane, but it's so hard to pick up. Like, there's little keys. Like I said, leverage points. Where's the nickel at, or the star, or whoever you want to call it? Is he playing inside shade? Is he playing outside shade? Well, it looks like it's man, but he's playing outside shade right now. Or he's playing inside shade, and there's no safety over the top of him, or there is a safety that's kind of shaded to his size. It's probably Tampa 2. It's just little things like that, right? It's so hard. It's so it takes so much time in the film room. That's why QB1's doing his thing, quarterback coach is doing his thing, the head coach is doing his thing, and then you got QB3 or the practice squad guys. They're all spending time. Like, usually they'll take 3 games a piece. So the QB coach and head coach, obviously, they're going to watch as much as they want. But then, quarterback 1 is going to take probably 3 games. Let's say that the Niners are playing the Rams. They're going to watch the Rams play the Raiders, the Jets, the Packers, right? Boom. And then that's Jimmy would have taken those games, or Brock's taking those games. And then QB2, you're taking the next 3 games, and then QB3 you're taking the next. So we have 9 to 10 games of film study that we've broken down, and it's put into notebooks or put into Excel spreadsheets, and now the head coaches and QB1 have everything that they need from the past 9-10 games. So then the game plan changes based off of these guys are going to run. They like to run this match 3 coverage, and then the next week they're a base 4 team, and then they're a 30 front team, so we can do these things against them. So they change the playbook every week. When Tyler Bray was in the league and he was playing for the Chiefs, they had played the Patriots in the playoffs. When Alex was there, he was Alex's backup. And he gave me, I have a bunch of his playbooks from the NFL, and all the game. I don't know if I have any in here. I got
they're so dense.
I got the call cards too, like the actual for Andy Reid's like play calling cards. Like, I have probably 50 of them from the Chiefs, and it has his handwritten notes on the play calling cards. Wow. It's pretty crazy, but it's all in red, and all of the notes are in red. And I'm like, why the hell in red? Because to me it looks weird doing it in red. He said Alex Smith told him if you write it down in red, that you're 85% more likely to remember it if it's in a color like that versus, I don't know, like, I was like, just give me a damn black pen and I'll write it down, like whatever it may be. So, but yeah, he learned that from Alex Smith, and it probably came from Andy Reid. So that's why all the notes are in red. But they went and played the Patriots in the playoffs, and they had a full binder, like a brand new binder, just for the first game of the playoffs in, was it 2014, 2015, whatever it was, when they played the Patriots, like a whole new install for that week going in the playoffs. It's like, what the hell? Like, this, to me as a quarterback, you're like, dude, we're really doing this? Like, I'm thinking, like, there's no way. How would you expect everybody to remember, 150 plus plays, and now we're going to install 20 more just for this week because of the matchups, because of Belichick's defense, and this is how we're going to try and beat them.
Yeah.
But that's why they make the big bucks.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I actually got some playbooks from a guy who was on Andy Reid's staff. He won't tell me who he is though. He stays anonymous on Twitter. But he had Ed Donatell's weekly installs from the 49ers from 2012. I think it was 2012 or 2013. And it's exactly like you say, you know, they're 150 pages. That's the weekly install. And you look at it and how much, you know, there's all these different little things that change. And it's like you said, defenses get so exotic. The one thing that I think I've learned to appreciate and learn so much from watching NFL film was just how complex NFL defenses really are.
Yeah.
And that it's not as simple as, okay, you're going against a cover 3, you can just run a flood concept every time, you know, and you're going to beat that. No, they're going to have a way to match that. These guys they're changing their coverage rules from time to time, and they're doing things of, okay, we're going to match this route on that. And you know, what was really interesting when I went down to the Senior Bowl was it was the American side. The DB coach there was spending in practice every day working on their zone matching and with the DBs. I was sitting there with Wayne Breezy, another content creator, and I pointed over. I said, that's a really interesting drill to watch. And he goes, why? I said, and I was just saying, I said, because what he's looking for is how quickly these guys can identify route concepts and match. And they're trying to show this to see where these guys is from a defensive perspective, their processing abilities.
Right.
So it was really interesting to watch there, of almost the, you know, that kind of thing from the defensive side. So, you know, before I let you go, can I get you to break down some footwork?
No, absolutely. Let's do it.
Okay. Cool. So
I got probably like 10 minutes or so. So we're good.
Okay, cool. So as a play, I sent you. Now this is a double stick concept versus the Rams. Yep. Jimmy G's here at quarterback. I'll back this up a little bit where we can get the play art on here. What generally it's see if I can move us onto the side a little bit and so we can see everything on here. Would be considered like a pick a side read, correct?
Hey, my head's not in the way.
Sorry, Adam cut you off there. So this would be a little bit of a pick a side read, correct?
Yep. Yeah. So this is just like pre-snap matchup. Who do I like? What side of the field am I on? You know, based off of knowing it's double stick, we're on the right hash. It's going to be tighter on the bottom. What's the numbers look like? We got the DB that's playing, 9 yards off, roughly, off Ayuk on the top there. And then on the bottom side is at Ramsey, who's playing a little bit tighter. He's playing outside shade, which, you know, you're running an out route to an outside shade defender. Plus you got the linebacker, and then you got a defensive end that's standing up on the edge that's also outside shade that could potentially maybe knock off is that Kittle, I think it is, off his route. So just quick, like walk up to line of scrimmage. I got one high safety. Where's my leverage points? Okay, the numbers look better on the left than do to the right, and I'm going to work the wider side of the field. And so you got 2-on-1 on the top, and you're not going to count the D end here on the bottom, but he's playing outside shade. So if he wanted to get hands on Kittle and disrupt him as he's going to push up the field, that could be an issue. So let's call it 2-on-2 on the top, and then let's call it 3-on-2 on the bottom. Like just like I said, if you're going to include the D end. So I would like the top just based off of this pre-snap.
Right. So your linebacker up at the top, you know, he's inside the formation. So, you know, he doesn't have any good positioning for outside leverage. So, you know, the only way the Rams can really cover this is they've got to drop the D end and the corner has to attack. You know, that's the only way that they can get. So you're really looking at ostensibly a 2-on-2, and on the bottom you have the potential for dropping out. You have the line safety outside the formation. He's looking like a force defender, so that way they can have a 3-over-2. So that's why you're going to want to look to that side. I love the breakdown that you're going to have over here on the stick concept. Now the stick concept is going to be your tight end's going to run a side adjust route. So if it's versus zone, he's generally going to sit that down between the zones. If it's man, generally not all offenses do it this way, people. He's going to run away from the man coverage, and so generally it's an out to in read here. And this is Jimmy G versus they'll let it run. He takes it. picks exactly where you would go, fires to Kittle versus the off coverage. Now, I remember I tagged you in this tweet in this clip. I think it was like last November.
Yeah, I think I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, because one aspect that always drove me nuts in talking to people about Jimmy G, as I said, Jimmy G, I love his footwork a lot of the time because it's tied into the routes. Like it's on time. The ball comes out on time. And people would always argue me. They say, no, his footwork sucks. And I'd say, I don't know what you're meaning. And they would say, well, he throws off his back foot. I'm like, you're not talking about footwork. I'm talking about footwork as in tying the steps to the timing of the route. So, this being a 3-step drop, he's wanting that ball needs to come out on that 3rd step, right? Like, this is, it's boom, 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 balls out. So, walk us through a little bit of what this looks to you as a quarterback coach.
Right. And also too, how he knows, how you can tell that the coverage is what it is. I think it was a fire zone. Like 33 is walking up. The leverage points doesn't look like it's man, right? Like this doesn't look like a man coverage. And then if you he's playing outside shade right there of Kittle, and then you got your other D end on the bottom here who's playing outside shade. So if he was going to drop off into coverage, you're giving who is that? Dwelly free access up the field, right? There's no outside help, so he's going to drop, or he was going to give him access to the inside because he's going to have safety help on the inside, right? So like he would have safety help knowing that it's a 3 high look with cover 3, or the fire zone being cover 3, so they're gonna have like a 3 deep zone. But you got, who's it, Taylor Rapp, I think is the safety that's in the middle. He's playing deep middle, so you can funnel as a defender. Their job is to funnel those guys inside. Now if it was a 2 high look, they're probably going to be playing inside leverage, because if I give him free access into the middle of the field, unless it's Tampa, we're screwed, because they can run benders on us all day. They can slice the middle, where we have just deep safety help and nobody's dropping off deep, like I said, unless it's Tampa too. So you can usually tell, like, this is one of those circumstances where you just look at the leverage points of the linebackers or the nickel, and they'll be able to tell you, whether it's going to be a 2 high or a 3 high if they're going to roll it. So that's one of those pre-snap things that you got to look at. So I'm assuming, obviously, Jimmy, watching his film, knew it was going to be a zone zone look with a 1 high safety. It's basically, I'm taking that first step. I'll peek the safety first step up the field. If I needed to, I'll peek the safety as I'm dropping, and then I'm going to use my break step or my crossover, and my eyes are going to get to the flat defender on the left side. So whoever's number 2 outside on the left, whether, again, if that was a safety that rolls down, if that's the DN that drops off, if it's a linebacker that's going to take the flats, whoever number 2 outside usually is, or the flat defender in this case, is going to be our read. So we're just trying to put him in a bind. We're working 2-on-1 against him. The corner is not even a factor in this concept because he's playing so often soft, right? I already know we're breaking the timing route. By the time I put my foot in the ground and I get the ball up, he's not a factor. Whether he breaks downhill and makes a play on it, that is what it is. But if we got 5 or 6 yards out of it, then great. So I'm getting my eyes to the left. I'm looking flat defender or number 2 outside, whoever that is.
So here we go, rolling with Jimmy here. He's kind of peeking around.
He's peeking. So he's seeing 33 start to move down a little bit. He sees him widen out. Safety starts to move, right? Boom. Right at the snap, he'll look safety, sees him go to the middle of the field, and now I'm getting my eyes to the flat or number 2 outside to the left, which I think it ends up being, that D end or that backer. These days you can't tell because they all look the same. They're all freak athletes. So
the jersey numbers.
Yeah, exactly. So right there, I would say flat defender is outside linebacker, whoever, or the DN that's on Dwelly. That'd be my read.
And so you see him there on Dwelly, you're right there. He knows he's
I know I'm going to Ayuk. right away because he's already looking inside, funneling. What I remember what I was saying as far as cover 3, he knows he's got help inside. So if Dwelly pushes vert, he's going to send him to the safety, right?
Mhm.
Because he can funnel him inside to the safety. If it was cover 2, he couldn't do that. He'd want to wall him off. If he was, people say hook to curl. It's not hook to curl. It's going to wall him off, wall, and then sit in that hook zone area. So his responsibility is to literally not let him have free access to the middle of the field. So here he's walling Dwelly off. I know right away. Boom. Jimmy's getting his head there on his break step, which is football fundamentals, QB, like 101, great footwork. And he's already setting his left foot. If you see his left foot starting to pivot, that ankle is starting to pivot to the left side. And then his right foot will hit the ground and somewhat should match that angle. Boom. There his right foot matches the angle. Now he's got a straight line throw to Brandon Ayuk. It's like textbook footwork right there.
Yeah. And what I love
and the
about
ball's out
Jimmy
on
here,
time, and he got a guy in his face. Some people say, "Oh, he swung his hip open." Nobody cares if he swung his hip open because it's a 7-yard, 10-yard throw here, right? Like, let's not be hypercritical of the situation. What was the outcome, right? I don't care if a guy does a backflip and throws a 70-yard bomb. What's the outcome, you know?
Right. I mean, because that's Aaron Donald splitting to double team, and the thing is, he's able to hit his plant and get his foot open to the target. That's rarer than you think from quarterbacks.
Yeah.
Most
I've guys that want to do this here, they'll put their foot. Sorry to cut you off.
No.
They'll put their back foot still. They'll have it up the field like a lot of young guys. Where it changes is a lot of young guys would still have their right foot pointed probably towards that left hash up the field vertically. So like the back ankle, like if you thought about your ankle bone on the inside of your back ankle, their back ankle would be pointed up the field towards the upright still. And then they would swing their left hip. So their left hip would swing open and their whole front side is gone. And they usually try and pull the ball across their body to the left side. And there's usually 2 misses. It's either going to be low left when they do that. Some guys they get good with their hands and they can make it happen. It's either low left, or when their front side's gone and they're throwing an out-breaking route to the left side, their hand can't catch up in time and they're going to miss it to the inside. Almost 90% of the time they'll miss it to the inside slightly. Like it'll be one of these balls that's right behind them.
And sometimes a pick six. And and that's the part that people, again, it's so frustrating because people say, well, throw this kid out there, he's got to learn on that. And you go, well, you got to get some of this stuff down, or else you don't understand, like, the margin of error is very small here. And it's just like, can be a foot placement. And like say, there's some catch, it's what you want to see. And it's, again, not to beleaguer because he's on a different team now with Jimmy G. It would be frustrating to watch this kind of stuff and see him do this stuff on the regular. And people sit there and talk about he's terrible this, terrible that. And you go, guys, it can get a lot worse than Jimmy G.
For sure. We saw it. That's my biggest gripe with it is we saw it before Jimmy showed up. What did it really look like?
Right.
It was a dumpster fire.
Beathard,
it was terrible. And that's why what's that?
Beathard and Mullins,
Yeah, and I'm not saying they were terrible guys. Like they had their moments, right? Like everybody has their moments. But when Jimmy steps into the same offense off of a 1 week of learning the playbook and they go do what they do and they end up beating that badass Jaguars defense, on what was like a couple days before Christmas, is like, holy hell. Like, this is a dude right here. Because Niner fans, including myself, were starving for something like that. Finally, like we had to go through, like we had Alex Smith and he had to deal with so many coordinators, and he finally starts coming around, and guess what? Oh, he gets hurt like all the other Niner quarterbacks when they start doing well, right? So he gets hurt, and then they end up going to the Super Bowl, and Cap comes around, and then all the crap with Cap happens, and then it's like, boom, crumbling. Everything comes crumbling down. And then they go through Tom Sula and Chip Kelly, and then we got Shanahan, which I'm like, finally, we got a dude. We got a dude. We got it. And then quarterback play happens, and then Jimmy comes, like, that's the one. And here's the thing. People are like, oh, we paid him 137 million, whatever it was. If they didn't pay Jimmy, he was gone like that. You had to pay him fair market value because he was gone. Like before people, there's the talks that Belichick didn't send him to the Browns for first round draft pick because he knew he would have been screwed over there in Cleveland, right? So then he sent him to Shanahan because he knew Shanahan would do well with him, and basically wanted to save Jimmy. There was a reason why Jimmy was, I think, the highest paid backup in the NFL behind Tom Brady, or one of the highest paid if he wasn't.
And they waited till the absolute last second to trade him.
Right, but
I mean, he was Brady's insurance.
For sure. And so if you're the highest paid player, highest paid backup in the league, and you're on Belichick's roster, clearly one of the greatest coaches alive sees something in you, right? Shanahan wanted you bad enough. Clearly he saw something in you. And so that's my argument. And we've seen him play, and most certainly not the worst, not even close. I've always said, I mean, when Jimmy's on, there's not, I would say he falls in like the 10 to 15 range. When he's on, he's going to fall. He'll creep in like the 9 or 10, or 8, 9, 10, I think. But the one thing you talked about earlier with Mount Rushmore, I guess, of the quarterback attributes, when Jimmy is on, he's not scared to pull the trigger.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the hardest things to teach a quarterback, is you either got it or you don't. That I can teach you to throw the ball and look good and do this, and I can teach you X's and O's, and we can sit and talk shop all day. You could run through film and tell me every single defense in the NFL. But when you get under center and it's time to rock and you got to pull the trigger, it's hard to teach those things. Yeah. And I don't think Jimmy, and sometimes he pulled the trigger too quick, right? Sometimes he pulled the trigger when he shouldn't have. But a lot of quarterbacks do that. And that was my other end of the argument. It's like when he would pull the trigger and it wasn't great. Other quarterbacks pull the trigger and it's not great. But on the back end, they'll do something sexy to make you forget about the dumb thing they did prior in the game. Mm-hmm. And Jimmy didn't do enough of the sexy stuff after the mistakes, right? Like Pat Mahomes makes mistakes. Josh makes mistakes. Tom Brady would make mistakes. But then Pat will come out, roll left, and throw a backside post, for 50 yards to Tyreek Hill. Like, who gives a shit about excuse my language. Who cares about the interception that he threw prior in the game, right? Like, nobody cares anymore because he did that. Jimmy didn't do those things that made people forget about the little things that he did in the game. And so that I don't blame people. Like, I really don't. But that's always been my take on it. But when you talk about solid quarterback play, he worked the inside of the field, probably as good, if not better, than anybody in the league. And he wasn't scared to do it where it's the hardest part of the field to actually work. He didn't work a ton on the outside, but here's the thing too. It's like they were winning games. Why the hell did he need to work the outside of the field? You know what I'm saying? Like, most of the time they were winning games and the run game was effective enough. So it's like, well, Jimmy didn't have to throw outside the hashes most of the time, right? And then when he did, they never really did it. So then you're asking him to do something that he hardly does. It's like, well, what do you kind of expect when you're doing something that the deep ball? He doesn't have a great deep ball. Well, you watch Jimmy's college tape. Jimmy ran the air raid. Jimmy threw for 5,000 yards his senior year in college. He threw the ball 550 times. Like, I clicked on his highlight tape. I was actually talking to Jesse about it, and I'd never watched Jimmy's college highlights. And it was a whole thing of when Kyle said he's one of the better throwers on the planet. And people are like, whoa, what do you mean by that?
There was a lot of eye rolls on that. There was a lot of eye rolls.
Right. And I get, like, Kyle's going to say that because he's going to back his quarterback. So I was like, you know what? I want to go back and watch this guy in college. Like, I want to see what he did and how much it's really changed once he got to the NFL. If you watch his college highlight tape, there's one on YouTube that's like 7 minutes. I don't think I saw a ball under 25 yards on the highlight tape for like 4 minutes of the tape. He's just airing it out. And I'm like, where the hell is this? Like, why aren't we seeing this? Like, it's literal air raid. Didn't he win the Walter Payton that year?
Yeah.
Did he win the Walter Payton? Yeah. So he won the Division I AA Heisman. He threw for over, I think it was over 5,000 yards,
Yeah,
550
he beat
times.
Romo's record.
Which is like, and now you watch him, you're like, well, he's not this, he's not that. Well, if you watched him in college, you would probably think a lot different.
And even if you go and when we traded for him, I didn't know much about him at all. I was like, I don't know really this Jimmy Garoppolo guys. I went and watched the
Right.
games he played with the Patriots, and I was like, there's something to this guy. And it was exactly what you're saying. There was a lot more pushing the ball to a lot of different areas. And I've constantly had it's like a chicken and egg argument you have with people. Okay, is the passing game and kind of the heat maps that everybody loves to share and try and make a point with, is that a result of the offense, or is it the coach? Is the coach using this offense as a result of the players they have, or is this because it ties into the overall philosophy of the offense? And when I'd said this, God, it's funny because I've made so many of the same points to different people. I'd say, they say, yeah, he can't throw the deep outside the numbers. I say, you also got to remember it's time on task. How much time are they working on this? Like, this is not like, this is at the NFL level. You have to put time on task into this specific category. If you're the Chiefs and you have Tyreek Hill, yes, you are going to be, trust me, you're probably going to be running a lot of very deep passing concepts and practicing them over and over and over and over again, because you have to have that time on task. If there's things you're doing that aren't time on task, and I've also said, for years, I'm like, who is going to be that Tyreek Hill on our team? Did you really, was there a receiver that you trusted to beat somebody 45 yards down the sideline? Because there really wasn't a guy that I saw.
That's the biggest thing. And I think I don't think I think it's philosophy and what's working right now. And Kyle's obviously done a good job at it. You watch his philosophy with the Falcons. It was similar, but there was one guy, I don't know if people remember him. His name was Julio Jones.
Maybe had something to do with it.
So this guy named Julio Jones playing outside is a little bit different looking than Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel. Runs a little bit different and jumps a little bit different than Juwan Jennings. So, and then the running backs, right? He had two stud running backs at the time. He worked the hell out of the running backs. And you also had Matt Ryan, who was a good quarterback. They didn't do, besides, and I'd have to go back and watch, but besides Julio Jones, who was really running 50 yards down the field making spectacular catches?
Nobody.
Right. And so you take that on the flip side. Currently, right now, who's going to do the exact same thing down the field for the 49ers? I think Brandon Ayuk has somewhat of a potential to do it because he's very lengthy, right? He is lengthy. His reach is incredible, but he is a very crafty, becoming a really, really cool route runner to watch now.
Yes,
Deebo Samuel
he has grown so much
up the field.
No,
I'm watching Ayuk, doing the film, and you obviously watch a lot of film, but watching him from the blocking assignments that he has to the routes, it's like he's almost like your dream receiver to play with because he does everything pretty damn well.
Mm-hmm.
And he's getting better at the routes. Like his routes are getting sexy, for lack of a better word. Like he is getting crafty with it. You watch him run that whip route against Jalen Ramsey last year against the Rams, like broke him off. Like, dude, yeah, you didn't get the ball, but that was sick. Like, yeah. People like, oh, he was wide open. Well, that was another thing. Jimmy didn't throw it to him. Well, maybe that's an alert read on the backside, and Jimmy liked the front side, right? Like maybe it was maybe Kyle's in the headset saying, look to the left side. Don't throw it at Ramsey on the boundary, playing man up on Brandon Ayuk, because most people don't want to go that way anyways. Right? Yeah, he got broke off, but how many times do you really see Jalen Ramsey get broke off historically?
Right.
Not a ton, right?
I mean, and like you said, it's about matchups too. When you're looking pre-snap, who do you like going against more, Jalen Ramsey or I don't even remember the guy's name. He was number 6.
Some no-name corner. I'm going at the no-name corner until it shows me he can actually stop it.
Right.
It's just the truth. That's the fact of the matter. That's how quarterbacks are thinking too. You don't want to if you throw to Ramsey and he jumps, it's 99 the other way.
Mm-hmm.
And then you look like an idiot, right? Because I tried to press Ramsey and think I'm hot shit as a quarterback. For what?
And Ramsey, has picked off Jimmy a few times
Right.
from bailing his assignment too. We've seen him. He was in I remember one interception Jimmy threw. Ramsey was in a cloud coverage, and he totally bailed his cloud coverage and made an interception over in the hook area. It was like, what was he even doing over there? But that's
Yep.
Jalen Ramsey. He's going to be super aggressive. He's going to jump things sometimes, and he'll get himself burned, but he's also going to make some splash plays against you. That is part of it.
Yep. We learned our lesson in Seattle when we tried to throw at some guy named Richard Sherman in the playoffs too, right?
Oh boy. Too soon.
That's a whole other
soon.
story, unfortunately. Yeah. So
Too soon.
no, but I think the offense, I think it's solid where it's at. I've always said I'd love to see another big receiver on the outside. I think it would help those guys so much. And I'm not talking, when I say big receiver, I'm not talking Anquan Bolden coming and working the inside of the field. Like Debo Samuel can do those things. Jawan Jennings should probably do those things, but we have Kittle that does that very well. We have running backs that were very similar setup to the Falcons and Coleman. Right at the time, Coleman was the little scat back and would catch balls out of the backfield. And who was the other one that they had? I forget.
Sanu. They had Sanu and it was
the running back though.
Oh,
dude with the dreads, right?
Yeah.
I forget his name. Damn it. But they had two solid running backs that were both good fantasy running backs too. Like I remember, obviously you have one or the other, you were going to do all right in fantasy. But they had Sanu was a bigger guy, and he was playing well at the time. And then you had Julio Jones. I just wish, I always go back to it. It's like, give me another Brandon Lloyd. Like, I would love to see the 49ers get, just a dude that's going to make spec catches and jump out the gym and just bail your quarterback out. When shit hits the fan and I got to throw it up, like, I want to throw it up to a dude like that, right?
Yeah.
So, and they just don't – that's not – they haven't drafted like that. It's not the sexy pick, right? They went instead of getting that. No offense, it's not a shot at him at all. They went and got Danny Gray, right? It's like, okay, well, we got somebody who's like Brandon Ayuk again, but maybe a little bit faster straight line speed, but nowhere near the route runner. Not yet,
right.
At least.
Oh no.
And his hands aren't probably nearly as good, So it's like, well, why didn't we just go get the 6'3" guy that maybe was at a smaller school, but he balled out? We never know what he's going to turn into. So
yeah, people have asked me about Danny Gray, and I say, dude's got to, because they say, he's not on the field anymore because Trey Lance isn't out there, and so you can't use his speed because Trey Lance's big arm's not there. And I said, no, right. Danny Gray's not on the field because he's been a terrible route runner.
Yes, it was Devontae Freeman. Whoever said that in the comments. The draftsman, long draftsman. It was Devontae Freeman.
Devontae Freeman. Yeah, I knew it was a Devontae. I was sitting there. I'm going, it's Devontae something. Yeah. And what's fascinating, even if you go back to the Falcons offense with Kyle, I did a numbers dive on it years ago or last year. I think I was looking at what were the Falcons before Kyle got there, and they were like third in the league in passing attempts, and they were 32nd in the league in rushing attempts. That was like 2013. I think 2014 they were 28th in rushing attempts and third or fourth in passing attempts. By 2016 they were 26th in the league in passing attempts, and they were 12th in the league in rushing attempts. Kyle took them from a pass first team, a team that was passing the ball more than about anybody in the league, to a running team and was throwing the ball at one of the lowest rates in the league. So, when you look at Kyle's offense, it's always, you're not going to see, if he's winning, you're not going to be putting the ball up. That's just how he is. Mike, his dad, was that same way.
Unless he's in the last 7 minutes of the Super Bowl.
Yeah, unless in the last 7 minutes. Oh, too soon. Too soon. Even if you look at his dad,
was always going to kill me.
Like Mike had John freaking Elway, and they were 22nd out of 28 teams in passing, and they were first in rushing attempts. I mean, that's just the Shanahan way. And people want, and Brandon Ayuk said this in his interview with Brad Graham. Said, look, I was a 1,000-yard receiver on a run first team. That that's just, you're not going to see a lot of, and they draft that way. They really do draft that way. And when I've looked through Kyle's playbook, especially the drop back passing game, a lot of those deep outside the numbers routes are going to be alerts. And I've felt the way, because people ask me, I think it was after 2021, what do we need to see? What does Trey got to do to come in and elevate this offense past what Jimmy did? And I said, what really needs to happen, this was before last season began. I said, what really needs to happen is if Brandon Ayuk becomes that guy, if he becomes that X receiver that can beat man coverage every time, if he really becomes that guy, that's what's going to take this offense to the next level. And people say, well, he's got to have a quarterback that can have the ball. I say, no, he's got to put it on film. You need to show it to the other teams. You can't just say, well, I don't have a quarterback and get me the ball, which I didn't believe in that anyways. But you can't just say that and say, well, he's not going to be running his routes as best he can. He's not going to be winning his matchups. I'm like, that's hogwash. He's in the NFL. His job is to be the best receiver on this team. If he becomes that guy on the outside, then this offense takes another step to another level. And we started to see some of that last year. People said, it was because Purdy came in and the offense just really transformed. I said, well, the team also started playing better. Brandon Ayuk really started playing like his growth throughout the year was blooming near the end of the year. The things he could do, and you would see Brock would they'd have a concept side on a zone beater on one side, and they'd have Brandon Ayuk on the other. And if it was man coverage, he was looking at Brandon Ayuk, and Brandon Ayuk was winning. That was the biggest thing. You could rely on him to win those routes. It was like, okay, I got a zone beater over here, and now they're playing man, so I can go to Brandon Ayuk because now you have answers for the defense. It hasn't always been that way. Sometimes when they come out with certain coverage, you didn't have an answer for that because you weren't going to win on that route.
Devontae Adams and Aaron Rodgers.
Right, exactly.
Well, we remember it very well for those who watched the last 30 seconds of that game. 2 years ago, right? Or 3 years, whatever it was. It's like, I always remember the bad ones. I hardly remember the good ones. You always remember the bad ones. But
yeah,
it's like the last 30 seconds of the game, he hit Devontae like 4 times in a row. They had an answer for every triple coverage, double coverage, base zone, whatever it was, man plus zone. They had an answer, and he didn't care. He was throwing him the ball, and Devontae got open.
Yep.
I'm not saying Brandon Ayuk is going to be Devontae Adams, but he is shaping up to be the guy at the line of scrimmage that can get off the press, that can work the open field, that is catching balls. Yeah, he dropped one, with Brock on the sideline there, and I'm sure he's still probably killing himself over it. But I think that his growth was so big last year. If Brandon Ayuk doesn't grow the way he did last year, with the way that Debo started and played, the Niners wouldn't have won as many games as they did. And I talked about it in the beginning, and people wanted to give me hell for it.
They gave you so much crap in the comments. I remember
said,
that show.
Debo, you're bashing Debo. It's like, dude, I love Debo Samuel. I'm just calling it out as I see it, and this is what would be happening in the film room. And then everybody came back towards the middle of the season like, dude, you're right. I'm like, well, yeah, it's because you watch the good, and when Debo doesn't have the ball in his hands, you started seeing him do these little things, right? And he called him, and what happened, a week ago?
Yeah.
He called himself out on it. Says, I got to be better at those things. It's like,
Said it was terrible. Said it was a terrible year. Said he cannot put those things on film. The moment I heard that, I even mentioned on the show last week, I was like, props to Greg Panelli because you called him out. And I remember I was watching that show and people were roasting you in the comment section. I was like, dude, no, it's there. It's on film. Like it's there. And I'll be honest, I was reticent to point it out during the season because I knew what people were going to say. And I was like,
right. I already knew it was coming.
Yeah,
I knew it was coming.
I'll be honest. Yeah. I backed away from the smoke a little bit. I'll be honest. Because here was the thing that we were dealing with at that time. The offense was struggling a little bit. And people were always saying, are you telling me that Debo Samuel and George Kittle and Brandon Ayuk are not enough weapons? And I kept saying, and I would be like, but Debo is not playing the way he's not playing at an all-pro level. He was all-pro last year. When he's got the ball in his hands, yes, but he's got to do something a little bit more to get the ball in his hands. Because there were some of those routes that, man, it'd be a now route, and it was the laziest now route you've ever seen. And the corner's jumping it, and the ball's getting batted down, and people are going, why is Jimmy forcing the ball in here? And you're like, it's a terrible route, man. Like
I saw him run that. I forget what game it was. Like Jimmy's. It might have been the Seahawks when Jimmy came in, or maybe it was the next home game thereafter. But Debo was just blocking. Like it was like inside zone, and he's blocking, and it's like the running back's barely at the line of scrimmage. and I see Devo do this, and he just like turns around and looks back to the inside. It's like, what? Like what? And then you see Brandon like flying across to try and cut the safety off coming downhill. And then he's pushing, and Debo's turning around. And I'm like, dude, there's no way. Like the receiver coach is gonna be jumping his ass for this in the film room because it's always like block to the whistle, right? Like linemen block to the whistle. You see them pushing dudes in the sideline, rolling over the top of them. Any lineman that's worth a crap. But then he runs a route, and he ran like a deep curl route, and he took like 4 extra steps at the top of his route, turns around, and the ball was on him already, and he jumps up and makes a catch. But it's like, oh, well, people are saying that's a high ball from Jimmy. It wasn't a great ball. Well, Debo took 4 extra steps to get out of his break, and the ball was already in the air. He turned around and had to make this reaction to the ball. If he actually ran the route on time, he would have probably started to come back, plucked it out of the air, and then turned up the field and ran. But like that's when I really started to notice when I was watching the run game, like, dude, when Debo doesn't have the ball in his hands, it's not great. Like it does not look good. And we're paying him a lot of money to catch or touch the ball 6 to 8 times, 9 times a game. And then he's hurt 2 to 3 games, 4 games a year. It's like, that's why. So it's like, I'm going to be critical. Like I love Debo. Like if I saw Debo Samuel on the street, I would be as starstruck as anybody. And I'm around pro athletes a lot. Like I'm a big fan of Debo Samuel. When that dude's got the ball in his hands, he is the real deal. But you got to be a complete player. Like you have to. If you're going to spend the money, and he knows it. And like you said, he called himself out on it. And I called him out, but he called himself out on it. And he took that. Like you got to take that to the chin and hopefully turn things around. Because if Debo plays how he's capable, which that's what people are thinking about. If Debo plays how he's truly capable, Ayuk has let's say he has the same season or better. Kittle's on the money and McCaffrey's on the money. That's a star-studded team. Yeah. But we can't have the half-asses of everybody. Like you're like, holy crap. That's the team that everybody thinks we're getting. Just because they're on the field running around doesn't mean you're getting that. And that's what we didn't get from Debo last year. But the sky's the limit for him too. He just got to stay healthy, man.
I remember there was one play, it was versus the Saints. We called a counter run, and he had to go pick up it was the box safety, and just didn't get there in time on the block. And his guy makes a tackle. And it's like one of those, if he makes the block, it's like a 50-yard run.
I know which play you're talking about because I had it in my notes. I know exactly which one you're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah. And
then he turns around and like looks back or something like, was that my guy? Like, bro, come on, man.
Yeah.
Like hustle. Dude, get there. Like that your one job is to get there to this point. And if you get there in time, we're gone. But you lollygagged it because you probably tired and you didn't get there, and he makes a tackle, and then you're going to turn around and make up an excuse.
And people were saying during the year, again, it comes back to they say when Brock came in, the offense he ran the offense so much better than Jimmy, and I guess what I was most impressed with Brock was that it wasn't like you put on the tape and you felt like, wow, I'm watching a rookie. It didn't feel like that. Right. That was the thing that was the most impressive with Brock. But as far as the team, the offensive output, I kept saying the run game started gelling. You actually started seeing some gelling in the run game. And some of it was you were seeing so many of these runs. It was like one block away from being home runs. It'd be like one block here, one block there, one block there. And it was so close. Or how about the
screen game that was 1 block away? Screen game against Atlanta. God. There was like 4 screens against Atlanta that you're like, wait, our offense was terrible against Atlanta. And then you start watching the film and everybody's like, I remember some guy came on the pod and tried to roast me about the Atlanta game. And I'm like, you're going to put the Atlanta game on Jimmy? He had 2 drop touchdown passes that dropped deep corner. Like I think it was a drop. Was it a drop?
It was a catch. It was called back for holding. Yeah, it was called back for holding.
And he throws that bomb, like probably the biggest bomb you've ever seen Jimmy throw. And you're like, finally,
on the money.
The dude is airing the ball out. Like, let's go. And then they're dropping the ball and it's called back. And then he throws a pick and everybody's like, he threw a damn pick. It's like, dude.
Right. Really? On like the 4th time we called that passing concept because it kept working and the guys kept dropping the ball.
Yeah, I think it was a 2-man route concept, right?
Yeah, it was a speed over, so they clear it out on one side, they're bringing the high crosser, and and the corner bails off of his deep third and jumps it, because it was like the fourth or fifth time we ran it because the guys kept dropping the ball and dropping the ball. And it's like, you can't keep going to the well. Like, you have got to take advantage when your coach calls the money play. He's going to keep calling it till the defense does something, and they adjusted. But there was,
and then he calls the screens and
the screen
in order
and
to
freaking Banks, man, that irritated me so much. He's out there and he totally whiffs the ball. If he gets that, Debo's gone, man. It's like, it's gone.
There's like
and
a
you can
couple of
see
those a
Banks
game at least.
like pout his way back to the huddle. You're like, come on. And it was like this for so long, and it felt like right near the end of the season, those things started to disappear. And it was like the entire team. It was like the entire team said, "Okay, you know what? We're on our third string quarterback. We've got to get our crap together." And
like
and they buckled down.
When you watch the Chiefs game, the difference, Pat Mahomes and Jimmy, two different quarterbacks, right? Like, I get it. But from an offensive scheme, the Chiefs didn't do anything that was so sexy, out of this world. We beat the 49ers because we can throw it 70 yards down the field. They didn't beat the Niners throwing it 70 yards down the field. They beat the Niners because they executed on offense. They did the little fly sweeps. They did the screens. They sealed the edge. They blocked. They did their assignments. They didn't do a ton of sexy stuff. And when Pat Mahomes tried to throw a pick, who did he throw it to? Did he throw one and then try to throw another one? And I say because it looked like he literally just tried to throw it to the flat defender. And so it's like, if Jimmy does that, we're lighting him on fire. It's over for him. But Pat won the game, so it's like, it's okay. And I get it, he's MVP. Like, he is that guy. It's okay. But the difference in the Chiefs when they play the 49ers, very good team. Chiefs are a very good team. The reason why they won the Super Bowl last year is because, yes, Pat Mahomes is great. Yes, Travis Kelce is great. But they operate very, very efficiently overall on offense. There's not a ton of little mistakes. There's not a ton of missed assignments. The expectations are high, and it's the same exact way the Patriots won for as long as they did.
Mm-hmm.
Patriots had one sexy year with Randy Moss, right? They lost, but that was like, we're going to chuck it. And then Tom Brady really wasn't chucking it around until he went to the Bucs, right? But besides that, again, very similar. Work the running backs. Run game works. We're going to work underneath. We'll dink and dunk down the field, and they did very well with it. And that's not like, I'm not taking a shot at Ryan. Like, that was the truth. Like, I asked Crocker the other day, and he said he didn't say it because the dink and dunk thing came up the other day, and Ryan and Jesse and Crocker, they're like, we're going to do a round table. So I was like, let's do it. Let's do the round table, and let's actually like talk about this. But then I asked Crocker on the podcast and said, do you think Tom Brady's a dink and dunk quarterback? Because I asked him if he thought Jimmy was, and I don't know if you saw it. I said, do you think Jimmy G is a dink and dunk quarterback? And he said no. And I said, okay, why? And his take for dink and dunk was dumping it off to the running backs. You're hitting your checkdowns a lot. And I said, yeah, I wish Jimmy probably would have hit some of his checkdowns more than forcing the ball down the field. But Jimmy lived in the 8 to 15 yard range on the field. He threw the dig routes, he threw the unders, he threw curl routes, he worked everything 8 to 15 yards, right? Then I said, okay, so this Tom Brady didn't get that quarterback, and he said yes. And then he started to explain himself, and then he went on Twitter and he said, I didn't say it, and I went and screen recorded it from the podcast. And I'm like, here you go, I got the receipts. Croc, you did say that he's a dink and dunk quarterback. So it's funny that took off the way that it did, because so many people like took offense to it, right? Like everybody, and that's the sensitive, like, oh my God, you're calling Brock a dink and dunker. Well, it's like, okay, that's fine if he's a dink and dunker, and if Tom Brady is too, like, I think there's stats behind it, right? There's facts behind it, and there's also the opinions behind it too, and everybody's obviously entitled to their opinion. Do I think that, is it bad that he's a dink and dunk quarterback? Not really, until you want to see him press the ball down the field. And if he's capable of still being able to press the ball down the field, that's what makes Brady different, is he could do, you knew within a minute of the game being over, like a Super Bowl, 1 minute left, forget it. Dude's hitting everything, unders, digs, spot concept. They're going to work snags. They're going to throw the 5 yard outs. He's going to dink and dunk all the way down. But when it comes time to pull the trigger, down the field, he can do it like
Right.
that, right? And that's what makes him so good. And so I think that people want to see more of it from Brock. But again, it's not that I don't think Brock can do it. It's just the offense doesn't necessarily set up for it. There's not a ton of 2-man, 3-man deep route concepts. It's normally a MOR, a must outside release. That's a runoff. Get the corner to turn his back and go, and then we're going to work the flood underneath.
Yeah.
That's basically what the Niners
yeah.
offense is.
You're going to see, a lot of, if it's single high, he's going to be running a deep curl, that's really just to occupy a corner, or if it's, you see too high, it's going to be a protection release fade, and it's going to be run that safety off and try and get that corner to, bend outside and drop back and give some cushion,
Yep.
And really open up that hook area. That's a lot of what you see. And, or in the play action pass game, we talked about that there's it's a lot of clearing routes. I mean, some of those concepts you can even look in his playbook. It's like, that's just a clearing route. It's not even in the progression. The high crosser's
Right.
number 1, the running back's number 2. That's it. It's 1,
But the only
2.
way you would throw that, if you came back to it, God forbid the DB fell down and you're like, okay, I got to go. Like,
Right.
I got to just make this throw,
Like,
and I can punt the ball to him, right?
It's got to be super clear, and one of those. And even then, we've seen our quarterbacks just not even look that way. But the thing, the only issue I ever had with Dink and Dunk is that, and I think some people had, is that it comes across as a pejorative term. It
Right.
comes across as a negative thing. I've gone, okay, you can label it Dink and Dunk if you want. I've always, people, if that's what he wants to call it, great. I've always called it ball control. Because that's what Bill Walsh was. It was a ball control offense. It was about living in that. It's about controlling the ball. You're not going to be putting it in harm's way as much. Hopefully,
What they say is like, coaches would say, take what they're giving you.
Right.
Take what they give you. Take what they give you, and that's taking what they're giving you until you have something that opens up down the field, and you can take a shot down the field.
Yeah, and if they're going to be running a lot of cover 3, guess what? You're going to work a lot of these underneath stuff. You got 4 guys underneath. You're going to stretch them out. You're going to put them in conflict. You're going to be able to do this and try and force them in that too high so that you can run the ball. And it's just it's throw the ball to set up the run. That's what Bill Walsh did, and it was about trying to get guys out of that single high so you can empty the box. And it's not always about going deep. That's what people would always frustrate me, is people say, well, you got to go deep to pull that safety out of the box. Not always, because if they're sitting in a 3 high shell, okay, you're not really going to be going deep down the sideline very much against that. That corner's got a 9-yard cushion on the outside, and he's playing deep third. I'm not looking at our guys and saying, okay, I'm going for the go route here. Again, I got him against a corner with a 9-yard cushion, playing deep third. Yeah, that's the route I'm looking for. No, you're going to run that guy off, and then you're going to match up your other receiver on a linebacker on an over route. I mean, that's what Kyle does. Right? We see him feast on those. So I've always looked at, like, I don't see that as the thing. But I know you got some kiddos there. I'll let you go. But thank you so much for tuning in. We had some plays you're going to break down, but man,
sorry,
it was
getting
talking
and doing some other stuff. So at some point or another, we'll do it again, though. We'll make sure
we'll have to have you on.
Yeah, so fantastic. Thank you so much. You bring so much knowledge in on this, and so in the chat, give him a shout out there. Make sure you're following on Twitter. It's Greg_Panelli on Twitter. You search Greg Panelli on Twitter, and he's gonna pop up. If you're not following on Twitter, you need to follow him. As you see, a guy that really, really knows what his stuff and comes with a lot of credentials. So thank you so much. And Niners, thank you all for Niner Faithful. Thank you all for tuning in. We will let y'all get out of here. Have a good night.